Awesome.
So we can give people a few minutes. I know we only have 30 minutes, but. Okay, it's 12:01 now, so I'm at least going to start with introductions and let people come in. We are recording, so hopefully we can share this with the group. My name's Brittany Ward. I'm a member of the St. Stephen's Young Professionals group, and I also work at the Ohio State University College of Social Work, hence Steve David, who is our advocacy director, and he hosted the first part of our Lunch and Learn, and everyone was so eager to learn more that we asked for a second part. I'm sure there will be some materials covered from the last session and room for questions and interactions. I will be cutting my camera on and off a little bit, but again, I'm recording, and I'm going to pass it over to you, Steve.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Brittany, for having me. Really appreciate the invite. Like I said, I accept any of these. So if any of y'all have a professional setting that you work in and want to like take this to your house, I'm always happy to do these, and kind of if you're looking for kind of the voting pep talk for your folks, happy to do it. So I really appreciate the opportunity to come back. Brittany said that she that after the first one, she was looking for more like the nuts and bolts about the process. So that's what I'm hoping to do today, is kind of like get into kind of more of the actually like how to register, how to vote by mail, and the other options we have for voting this year. I will put out there that like, you know, if anyone does want to turn their camera on, I always welcome that. Like when I teach in the classroom, like the head nodders are an important piece of that feedback for me. So if anyone is down to be my head nodders, to just know that like my jokes are landing at all, like I appreciate you all for that. But so yeah, I'm going to kind of go through like the technical piece of it and how to actually vote. So at any point, like feel free to jump in and stop me. I'll keep an eye on the chat as well. The funny thing, the funny thing about this is like I looked over at my door because I'm also currently working with some folks in the college to record an instructional video for how to vote by mail. And I think it is it's really interesting to me that like we need this instructional video to like let people know how to access the process, because it is an easy and convenient process, but there's also a lot of steps involved. So I feel there is that tension there between like how accessible we make our elections. And so hopefully this will be useful for y'all to kind of like give you some clarity around that. So this is me. So the first thing that I want to do again is something that I talked about last time, but I want to direct folks to voteohio.gov again as the tool to check your registration. And so if you can take out your phone right now and do this, it's a really handy website to use on your phone. So I'd recommend to just walk through these steps for yourself so you can be comfortable. So if you're talking to people at your job or your family members, that you know how to navigate this site. You know, I have a younger brother that actually just bought his first house, and so I'm planning on National Voter Registration Day to text him and like make sure that he uses this website to update his address. So what I'd like you to do is get out your phone and go to voteohio.gov. And this should take you to a screen that looks something like this. This is the Ohio Secretary of State's website. And so under this first block of navigation, there's this check my voter registration button. You know, most people have registered at some point or are registered already. So, you know, when you're asking folks, really the way to frame it is like, have you checked to make sure that your registration is up to date? So if you've moved since the last election, if you haven't voted in a little while and want to make sure that your registration is valid, it is a good practice to check before every election. So at voteohio.gov, under the check my registration button, you'll see a thing where you enter your first name, your last name, and the county that you live. So my name is Stephen David, and I live in Franklin County. So type that in and hit the search button. And then you should get a screen where hopefully your name then, or the name of the person that you searched, will come up and have the address that they're currently living at. So what you see here is the address, like where I'm registered. And so for me, this is great because this is where I'm currently living. You know, voters vote where voters live, so I'm good to go there. And if you click that name, then it takes you to this next page where it has your name, the address where you're registered, but also has your polling location. So if you are someone that does want to vote in person on election day, this is where you find that polling location. This is really important this year because some polling places will change because of COVID. So polling places that would be at like a senior center or like a community center that serves older adults, like will likely not be polling locations this year. So it's a good idea if someone does want to vote on election day to make sure that they check so they're not going somewhere that is not currently a polling place this year. So if you, so that's great for me, like all this information lines up, this is what I want to see. If it doesn't, scroll down to the bottom of that page and there's this button to update your address in the state of Ohio. You can do that online. It's a really simple process. So you put in your old address, you put in your new address, and it updates it. So is really handy for, you know, if folks are working with students or highly transient populations that move around a lot, they can update their address right online. You have until October 5th to do that. Ohio has a 30-day registration deadline, so October 5th is the deadline for the November 3rd election this year. Any questions about the registration thing? Anybody have difficulty navigating that? It's really a pretty handy site. And it's a good thing, like if you're, you know, if you're gonna text your brother like I am, the link I'm gonna text him is like go to voteohio.gov to check this stuff. So it's a really good resource to have for just basic voter registration things. So if you're also like, if you know people that aren't in the state of Ohio, you want to reach out to a family member somewhere else, send them to vote.org. This is a website that will direct them to their state website for things like their registration and getting an absentee ballot. So vote.org is a good resource if you're communicating with people from out of state. And then the last one that I did talk about last time, but that I wanted to mention again while I'm here with y'all, is vote411.org. This is the website from the League of Women Voters that gives you a sample ballot with all of your races. So if you know, everyone knows who the presidential candidates are, but like I don't know who my judge candidates are yet. I have not done that research yet. But when I want to figure out who I'm going to vote for judge and my county prosecutor and all the various down ballot races that happen, vote411.org is really handy. It has this place where you put in your street address and then it will tell you exactly who's on your ballot and give you a side-by-side comparison of the candidates and answers to the questions posed to them. This is run by the League of Women Voters, which is kind of the gold standard for nonpartisan voter information. So they cannot edit the responses they get from candidates at all. They send the same questions to all the candidates and they put up exactly what the candidates send back to them. So nonpartisan resource, really good thing that people can trust to know that they're getting good unfiltered information right from the candidates themselves. Cool. So casting your ballot, I want to spend a little bit of time on how you can actually vote in Ohio because there's a couple ways that you can do this. And they all have slightly different rules. And so again, you know, there's this piece that I think is really important of, you know, we want to make sure that people know that like you have multiple options and that elections are accessible in Ohio. But I think you'll also see that like this process, it could be easier than it is. And so I'm always thinking about like who we're tailoring this to and the fact that, you know, the right to vote in this country has never been freely extended to all people. And, you know, we the people meant property owning white men back in 1776. And so there's a piece about voter suppression that I think is woven through all this that is important to keep in mind. But know that in the state of Ohio, you can either vote by mail, which is absentee voting, vote early in person, or vote on election day. So we're going to have those three options open. It's basically the same three options that we'd have in any other circumstance, unlike the primary, which was a vote by mail only primary that they changed to with the pandemic. The important thing here, though, is whatever you're going to do, make a plan, especially this year. Even if you're going to vote in person on election day, you're likely going to have a longer wait on your hands. So no matter what you're going to do, make a plan and stick to that plan so you make sure that you have time to cast your ballot. So the first one, vote by mail. This is has been the subject of much controversy and conversation this year. The president has derided this process continually, and we've seen the conversation around funding the post office. But here in Ohio, we're lucky because we have had a no-fault absentee system for a long time in this state. So anyone in the state of Ohio can vote by mail for any reason. You don't have to give an excuse to use the vote by mail system here. Some states you need like a doctor's note, other states you can't vote by mail at all. So here, we're really lucky that anyone for any reason can use the vote by mail system. So there's essentially 3 steps to voting by mail. You first have to request an absentee ballot. So absentee ballots aren't sent out to everyone automatically. So you can go to voteohio.gov and print the absentee ballot request form that I have an image of right here. You can print that out, complete it, and mail it back to your Board of Elections. Or you can call your Board of Elections. If you don't have a printer at home, you can call your Board of Elections and they will mail you a request form. So once you get your request form, either by printing it or by calling for it on the phone, you complete that and mail it back to your county Board of Elections. At voteohio.gov, it has the addresses of all the county boards, so you know which county board to send it to. So you'll send it to the county board of the county where you're planning to vote. The Secretary of State will also be mailing absentee ballot request forms to every registered voter this year. So in October, after the registration deadline passes, every registered voter will get a copy of the absentee ballot request form mailed to them. However, I would highly encourage you to not wait and request it now. I have this image down here flattening the ballot request curve. So if everyone waits until the last minute, it would overwhelm the Postal Service's ability to process all these request forms and ballots. So if you're watching this and then turning around and hopefully conveying this information to your friends, please spread the word to request your absentee ballot now, if not sooner. So step 1 is request your ballot. Can be done by printing it or calling your Board of Elections to get the form, and then you mail it back in. Step 2 is vote your ballot. So once you mail in your request form, your actual ballot will be sent to you. So you go and that is where you will fill in all the circles on your ballot, sign it at the bottom, and mail it back to your Board of Elections. It's really essential that you sign your absentee ballot. There is current ongoing litigation right now about how ballots have been thrown out because of signatures that did not match. So make sure that you sign your ballot legibly and then send it back to the Board of Elections. So step 1, request it. Step 2, vote the ballot. And step 3, return and track your ballot. So again, you have options here. So you can either put a stamp on your ballot and mail it into the Board of Elections, or you can physically take it to your county Board of Elections and drop it off there in person. So you can do that up until the close of the polls on Election Day. Note that you cannot bring your absentee ballot to your polling place. It has to be taken to the Board of Elections. And then if you choose to mail your ballot, there's also a track my ballot feature on voteohio.gov. So if you're someone who's skeptical about the post office and you're want to make sure that it gets to where it goes, voteohio.gov has a absentee ballot tracker. So you can track your ballot request to see when it's being mailed to you, and then you can track your ballot going back to the Board of Elections to make sure that they've received it. Moral of the story here is that there's multiple steps, but don't wait. Because you have to request it, mail the ballot request form in, have it mailed to you, and then mail it back to the Board of Elections. There's several steps involved here. So don't wait till the last minute to make sure that your vote does get counted. I'm gonna take a second I know this is really boring logistical stuff. So any questions about how the absentee ballot process works or things that you've heard about the process that may have you concerned about the vote by mail system?
Dave, this is really helpful because I know for me in the past, it's there's Vote Ohio, then there's 411, and it's which site do I go to? So I'm actually completing some of this as you're going through the presentation, which is really helpful.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Brittany. When there's multiple websites out there that will kind of do the same stuff. There's there's TurboVote and Voteorg, and I direct everyone to voteohio.gov. That is the official government website where you can do basically all of the voting things. So that's the one I'd really keep in mind and send folks to, as like you can get everything there. There's some that like look a little bit nicer because they're like third-party sites, but voteohio.gov is my go-to for pretty much all this stuff. Cool. So that was your first option, is vote by mail. So if you're someone that like has older adults that live in your home, or people with underlying medical conditions, voting by mail is a great, convenient option. You don't have to leave your house to go vote. You don't have to see anyone. All that you need is postage to send your request form in and then send your ballot in. So if you don't want to vote by mail, the other nice option that we have available here in the state of Ohio is early in-person voting. So for the 28 days before Election Day, you can go to your county board of election and vote early in person. So they have hours between October 6th and November 2nd. They're different hours on the weekdays and the weekends. So again, go to voteohio.gov to check the hours on the voting calendar. But the nice thing about voting early in person, this is actually how I voted in the primary this year. And so if you vote early in person, there's usually no line and it's really spaced out, and you can actually go and vote on the machine. So this is a good option, if you like the confidence of going in there and pressing the button and seeing your ballot print out. And it's also, you likely won't have to be around a bunch of other people because there are so many early voting days. The other handy thing about this is the only identification you need to vote early in person is the last four of your social. You can use any of the other forms that you need on Election Day, but if you're someone, for instance, that is experiencing homelessness, or has trouble getting some of these other forms, then all you need is the last four of your social as identification to vote early in person. So it's a great option for folks who have trouble getting other forms of ID. Again, the moral of the story throughout this whole thing is don't wait. If you want to vote early in person, I would suggest like that first week that it's open, go ahead and take advantage of that, and do it as early as possible to avoid other things coming up. And then the last option that will still be available for everyone if they choose to use it is voting in person on Election Day. So the thing that I'll say about this is, and I think former First Lady Obama told us, to pack a dinner and possibly a breakfast the next day, to stand in line as long as we need to. I'm really hoping that's not the case, but be prepared for longer lines than usual because of social distancing and cleaning that they're going to be doing. So they'll be spacing people out. They'll probably won't be able to fit as many people in the polling location, and the process will just take longer. So be prepared for longer lines. Have your ID ready, and my suggestion to folks is always have a second form, just in case there's some issue. I once tried to get married and realized that my license had expired when going to apply for my marriage license. So sometimes, you forget that your license has expired. So I always encourage folks to have a second form of ID. And know that people with disabilities can request accommodations at the polls, or can do curbside. There's a curbside voting option where you can send someone in, and a representative from your polling place will come out to your car at the curb, so that if someone who has mobility issues can't stand in line, that is an option for them. And again, voteohio.gov has a section about accommodations for folks with disabilities, if that's something that applies to you or your loved ones. So I want to go over acceptable forms of ID real quick if you are going to vote in person on Election Day. So we have a number of forms that you can use in the state of Ohio. The most common one that people use is an unexpired driver's license or state ID. The important thing to know about this is that it does not have to have your current address. If you've moved since but your ID is still valid, it doesn't have to have your current address. However, I have had poll workers challenge me on this in the past and had to be that guy that asked them to take out their manual to show them that this was legal, that the address doesn't have to match on your driver's license. I would say, though, if that's the case, it can't hurt to have a second form, one of these other forms. So a utility bill with the current address, a paycheck, a bank statement, or any type of government document that has your current address and it's from within the last 12 months. The tricky thing about this is that these all must be printed. I get all of my I do all my billing online right now. So I can't use my AEP statement on my phone. It has to be a printed copy. So note that student IDs are not accepted, and the voter registration notice you get from the Board of Elections is also not counted as a form of ID for this. So make sure you have one of these other forms. So, you know, things like if you have a phone bill, your utility bill, your gas bill, any of those things count, bank statement. But especially if your driver's license, your address doesn't currently match up, just know that sometimes people get confused on that one, but that is a valid form. So the important dates to remember, Tuesday, October 5th is a general election voter registration deadline. Early voting starts that next day and runs up until the day before Election Day. Saturday, October 31st is the deadline to request an absentee ballot. I put that out there, but don't wait until the 31st. Like, odds are if you wait that long to request your absentee ballot, it's not going to get to you in time for you to get it back in the time for it to be counted. So really, if you're going to vote by mail, you got to do it early this year. And then Tuesday, November 3rd is the general election. All these dates are on voteohio.gov. So the other plug that I want to make right now is if you are a young person or a younger person that does not have any medically compromised people in your home, I would really encourage you to consider being a poll worker this year. So I've always kind of colloquially known that like poll workers are mostly older adults, and somebody from the Board of Elections told me last week that in fact like 75% of poll workers are over the age of 55. So there's a serious need for younger people to step up this year and work the polls. You know, in some other states and cities, we've seen these stories of where like 300 polling places got consolidated down to 5. And that's largely due to like not having enough poll workers to staff polling places. So if we want to avoid that situation, we need people to step up and be poll workers this year. So the Board of Elections has a bunch of different training dates that you can do. They will train you. You work a super long day. It's 5:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. on Election Day. But you do get paid around, it's like $150 for the day. So you do get paid some money for it, but it's really like an essential role to make sure that we will have democracy in subsequent elections. So if you're able to do so, I highly encourage you to become a poll worker this year. You can sign up for that also on voteohio.gov. It's actually, if you did look it up on your phone earlier, when you first logged on to the site, you saw a message saying, encouraging you to be a poll worker. So they're really pushing for that. Is a huge need this cycle. So again, some of the other things I touched on last time, you know, voter suppression is very much still with us. Know that people with felonies can vote in the state of Ohio, though. A lot of disinformation around this, but if you have the opportunity to debunk that myth for someone, can be a really powerful intervention that we can make. People with felonies can vote in the state of Ohio. So that's what I got for y'all. I squeezed in, you know, I kept under time here. So what questions do people have about the process, about voting in general, or the other thing that, you know, I talk about a lot is kind of how to do this in your workplace. So if people have questions about like kind of what is like good above board strategies in the workplace to do, I'm happy to entertain those as well.
Steve, I have a quick question. This is Natalie. And you may have touched on this. I had to step out for a second. How many days in advance does the Board of Elections have to let you know if your polling location is closed? So
that's a great question, Natalie. I do not know the answer to that. You know, I imagine that there will be like, they will publicize this. You know, in the conversation that I had with the Board of Elections recently, you know, they allude to how like, you know, some of them will change, but they don't know which ones yet, and that's not set. So they will publicize it, but basically like my advice would be if someone is planning to vote in person on Election Day, check the day before and check the morning of. That, you know, you want to make sure like before you head out of the car that day when you're making your plan, that you check. So it can't hurt to do it multiple times. But yeah, I haven't heard any timeline on what that's going to look like on their end. I imagine that it could also be contingent on how many people they have available to work the polls. But yeah, that's a great question. Sorry, I don't have a good answer.
no, that's okay.
Steve, the Franklin County Board of Elections at 1700 Morse Road, is that the only place where you can go to do early voting?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, so 1700. What's that?
I was going to say, do you know what their hours are going to be?
You know what, I I don't know exactly, like voteohio.gov, like they'll have the hours available there. Let me,
Okay.
I can pull it up real quick also. It's like the, so here, I'll share my screen so we can see how to navigate to this. So I'm on voteohio.gov. If you go down here to the voting schedule, this has the calendar. And so we see that here's our deadline to register to vote. So early in-person voting, it looks like is 8 to 5
Okay.
during the week. And then starting on the 31st, we have weekend hours as well. So depending on when you go, the hours are a little bit different, but they're open later, closer to the election. So, 8 to 6 and 8 to 7, like those weeks leading up to it. So again, like I try and keep it so simple, like send people to voteohio.gov, have them check the schedule right there. When it is, this is like a really great option. I feel like there are, like I'm pushing absentee voting with a lot of folks, just because it's an important option for folks to have during the pandemic. But there are a lot of steps involved. Like going to vote early in person is, I feel like a lower risk thing than going to the grocery store, and is really simple. You get to go in, you get to vote at the machine, is really convenient. Provided, of course, that you are someone who has transportation and the time to go during, business hours up to the Board of Elections on Morris Road. So there's significant access pieces there, which again, I think we always need to be looking at in terms of how accessible we're making this, but is a great option for someone that might be reticent about the vote by mail process.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that question. That's great.
And Steve, also if for those folks that decide to, let's just say like they've always done voting in person on the day of, if you're in line by the time the polls close, if you are standing in line, you can vote, correct?
Yeah.
Like even if.
Yeah, as long as you are in line by 7:30, if there is a line like at 7:30, someone from the polling location will go and they will set it like this is the last person. But as long as you're in line by the time the polls close, everyone in line gets to vote. So our fingers are crossed that that's not the situation. And the other option I will put out there, if folks are looking for other ways to get involved, is the Ohio Voting Rights Coalition is coordinating a number of election protection activities. So if you want to be someone who's doing poll monitoring, so driving around your neighborhood and seeing about if there are if lines are queuing with polls, if people are having a hard time casting their ballot, they are looking for volunteers to do that work. And I'm putting a link in the chat right now, if that's something you are interested in.
You don't have to be an attorney to do that, right? You can be anyone.
So they have, if you are an attorney, they have this command center option for people to actually field the calls to the 866-R-VOTE hotline. So that's an option out there. But if you want to be a poll monitor, and they're also recruiting social media monitors this year, which is really cool, of folks to keep an eye out for election disinformation. So if some of those things interest you, or you're looking for, or you have someone that may have to very seriously maintain their social distancing and don't want to do something in person, there's great opportunities for them to plug in there.
Do you know if this was shared with students, Steve? This would be a good opportunity for field hours, or.
Brittany, I will. I'll show you the flyer. So I made this flyer, and it was this is not the OSU branding approved version, so it's in Jason's hands now to get the branded version. But yeah, this will be coming out for y'all to share with students soon.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Well, super appreciate y'all's time and deciding to sit through another half hour of me chat with you about voting and deadlines and ballot request forms. I know it's not the most engaging stuff in the world, but really appreciate the fact that y'all are interested in this, and hope that you'll continue to push it out to your networks.
Thank you so much, Steve. Any last minute
Thank
questions?
you.
Steve, again, I just want to say thank you on behalf of St. Stephen's Community House and, you know, all of us involved in the Young Professionals Board here. I do see that we have a few guests joining us today. We hope that we can continue these lunch and learns, you know, through the election cycle and, you know, try to educate our friends and family and networks to make sure that everyone has the correct information. So thank you. And thank you to Brittany Ward for heading all of this and our lunch and learns. We really appreciate your excellence in making this happen. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, folks. Appreciate you.
Yeah. All right.
I would just echo Natalie's thank you. Thank you, Brittany. I'm a board member at St. Stephen's, so it was good to be on this call. Thank you, Steve, for great information. I look forward to passing it on to my network of folks.
Awesome.
You guys have a good rest of the day. Thank you so much.
You too.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.